Hello and welcome back to Premier Talk Season 2. In our last season, we celebrated the reopening and returning to live arts. We covered dance, music, theatre, book launches and community festivals. It was a real high for the arts industry in the second half of 2021 to have audiences back in the theatres, artists performing live rehearsals and meetings in real spaces rather than through digital device. Arts students went back to their colleges and universities, and we ended the year in a positive note. This year, as London work life and social life slowly adjusts back to pre-pandemic normal, we will explore new creativity across the city. Together, we will talk about how we can rethink and reset with art for a better tomorrow. Social and environmental awareness has never been more relevant than today, and we will look at how art and creativity is responding to these themes. In this episode, we have our guest, Ben Duke, co-founder and artistic director of dance theatre company Lost Dog. Lost Dog occupies a unique position in the cultural landscape, drawing in and mixing ideas and audiences from theatre, dance, comedy, circus and storytelling through their unique presentations. Based in the beautiful Sussex countryside in Lawton and headed by Ben Duke, the company creates and tours their work to small village halls and to grand opera houses and everything in between. We are here at the place in Euston where their current production, A Tale of Two Cities, is being staged until the 5th of March, after which the show goes on tour. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Thank you for being our guest today, for joining us at Premier Talk. Firstly, congratulations for The Tale of Two Cities. Great reviews around. The stage says it's undeniably moving. And our writer from Abundant Art says, the use of different artistic means of expression transports us and time flies in the place theatre.
Yes.
So great reviews, and that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about what was central to your thought and the work process while you were creating The Tale of Two Cities.
I had read the book a long time ago and loved it. And I guess it wasn't so much a kind of clarity around theme, so much as an idea of it was a story that I felt interested in and wanted to tell. And I suppose as we started rehearsing, you have to, strip away stuff because it's a very long, complicated story. And in the process of doing that, I suppose it became clear that it was really about ideas of family, but also ideas of family and to do with kind of ancestors and grandparents and the idea of kind of generational trauma, or the idea of what gets passed down and how responsible we are, or who pays for the behavior of the people who've come before us.
My name is Lucie Manette. My mother is also called Lucie Manette. My dad is Charles Darnay and my brother is Sydney Manette Darnay.
And so it felt like it became, as we worked, it kind of focused in on the family and the relationships within that family.
And it's so important in the current times to look at and rethink about family relationships. The fact that we've been locked together for 2 years just recently.
Yeah.
So was it at that time when you were conceptualizing this, or was it before?
Yeah, so we started talking about the project before lockdown, and then obviously lockdown meant everything was postponed. And I suppose it kind of sat there in my head during that time, and maybe that sense of the kind of, the closeness of family. But also I suppose lockdown gave that time, it was interesting how in all kinds of areas there's that reassessment of history particularly, and it feels like it's no coincidence that so many things happened in that time when everything else stopped and people were given time to reflect. So I feel like, that those conversations around kind of families, but also on a bigger level, the conversations around our history as a nation and
our heritage
our
and
heritage,
roots and
exactly.
culture.
Yeah, that, you know, the statues and the things that kind of exist that we don't necessarily question, like who are these people and what did they do and how did we become a wealthy nation, and all of those things feel like, and I suppose Dickens in a way is part of that. Like his work is a bit of a kind of monument or a statue that we accept as part of a kind of English literature, even English identity, I suppose. And yeah, so there was something about wanting to re-examine that.
It's interesting, you know, you've worked with classics before, so you've done Paradise Lost, you've done Romeo Juliet, which you call Juliet and Romeo. So where does this inspiration come from to work on classics?
I'm not sure. It wasn't a kind of deliberate choice to begin with. It was so Paradise Lost was again a kind of piece of literature that I loved, and there was something ridiculous about Paradise Lost because it was such an epic, massive story, and the idea of trying to do that as a one-man show was was a bit of a joke, I suppose, to begin with, and then it, you know, gathered momentum and turned into the thing it turned into. But I think that there was something interesting for me in that idea of pre-existing stories and how they provide a framework, and how the thing that's interesting to me is how we kind of dig into stories, and how dance in particular offers us this kind of this thing that sits underneath stories, or allows us to kind of, you know, get into the cracks. And I suppose I felt like that was interesting to me, and it seemed to work better in a way to have things that existed that we could re-examine, rather than for me to write a story. I mean, I guess we are writing, we're devising, and we're looking at, you know, we're retelling those stories. But I guess I love that idea that we are constantly telling and retelling stories. Yeah. And there's so many amazing stories out there, and so many works. I studied kind of English literature, so I guess a lot of it comes from there. There were so many works of literature that I suddenly, not suddenly, that I love, and that they feel there, and they feel available, and they feel kind of worthy of.
And amazingly enough, they're still relatable in our society today.
Yeah.
It's not that things have drastically changed from what it was then to what it is now. It's just that we relate to it differently, but they're still relatable.
Exactly.
It's about God making stuff. People assume that was a smooth process. But it wasn't. A lot of stuff just went wrong, and some of that stuff he tried to kind of cover up. You know, when he's by himself, when he's sitting by himself, he's full of regret. You know, he knows that he messed up, and that eats away at him. But not even God can go back, you see. He can't change what he did already. He can't go back and do that. So he just carries on as if that's what was meant to happen.
And all of those stories have been retold. Like, you know, they're all, you know, Shakespeare had the story of Romeo and Juliet from somewhere else, and, you know, Dickens had the story of A Tale of Two Cities from a play he'd been a performer in. So they're all retellings anyway. So
Yes.
It feels like we're allowed to keep that retelling, you know, journey.
Yeah.
going.
So if we were to move on to the company, Lost Dog, tell us a little bit about Lost Dog's background and its story. It's a vibrant theatre dance company today. Where did it all start?
It started here, actually, right here.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I studied as a student at the place, and I was making work with a friend, Raquel Mezaguer. So the two of us were making duets as students, and yeah, we performed a piece here as part of our graduation show that then Darshan Singh Buller, who was running Phoenix at the time, saw the piece, and he called us a few weeks later saying, "Oh, I'd like to buy that piece for the company." And that was the kind of beginning of this crazy journey, really.
That's a very fortunate beginning.
It was an
straight
amazingly
away.
fortunate beginning. Yeah, it was a stroke of luck, and yeah, and then we carried on from there. We took work up to the Edinburgh Fringe, and we built the company.
Yeah, and how
from
did
there.
the name come about, Lost Dog?
The name came about, I think, like a lot of companies, that, you know, Edinburgh Fringe, you know, brochure thing, and it says name of company, and you're like, wow, what do we call ourselves? We were talking about mixtures, I suppose, is where it came from. We were talking about mixtures of form, and we ended up talking about mongrel, the idea of a mongrel dog, a dog that has kind of so many different parts to it, and it's not a pedigree, it's not a crossbreed, it's just kind of drawing from who knows where. And yeah, for some reason, well, mongrels felt like it had this slightly negative connotation, that word maybe, so that we then, from mongrel, got to Lost Dog. And yeah, it's a name that's kind of stayed surprisingly, you know, often you can come up with a name and think that's terrible, but actually it still works. It still works as an idea.
So from then to now, you know, now today you are an award-winning dancer, artistic director. How does it feel, and what would be your message to all the upcoming dancers, you know, who are looking forward to working in the industry?
Wow, yeah, I mean, it's such a different time now, and of course we felt like we were living in a time of, you know, it felt like there wasn't enough funding for the arts, it felt like, you know, the arts wasn't being prioritized, and it felt difficult, and now I look back and think, wow, that was actually a kind of golden era for arts funding, and for, you know, now things feel so much harder. And I don't know really. You know, you realize that there's no pathway, there's no kind of ladder or anything, and people find their own route through it. I think in terms of advice, I'm not very good at giving advice, but I think that there's that idea of working out. It took me quite a long time, I think, to work out who I was and the kind of work I wanted to make, and I feel like lots of the early things we were doing were very kind of, they were very much about imitating other performers and other companies that I admired. And I suppose there's something about how quickly can you work out what it is you want to do and try and be honest about that. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I think it's also about what's right for the individual, what works for you and might not work for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's also there.
Yeah, and I think there's that thing of understanding. I spent a lot of time kind of slightly rejecting the, you know, I wanted to move away from the kind of acting training I'd done, or from the English literature, and kind of move into this dance world. And it took me a while to go, actually, I'm made up of all of these parts of my history, actually, who I am, and it took a while to kind of really accept that part.
That was going to be my next question. So because you come from a background of acting and dance, as Ben Duke, the performer, what comes to you first if you're performing yourself? Do you think about acting straight away, acting it out, or do you think about movement straight away? Which one?
I'm not sure. I think, I guess I probably think in words first. I feel like I notice a lot of dancers, they're kind of, they begin with movement, or they begin with a kind of imagery, and I suppose for me it begins with words. So maybe that means, in a way, I think of it from a more theatrical standpoint to begin with. But I don't know. I mean, one of the reasons, one of the struggles I had with acting and kind of acting training was this idea that it still keeps us very much in our head and in our kind of rational thought. So in any process that I'm involved in now, I like the day to start with movement, and to kind of remind us of the body, and to kind of put the body somehow in the center, even if we are then spending most of that day talking or improvising with text. So yeah, probably as a performer, I begin with words, but I try and, you know, I try and get the body in there as soon as I can.
Now, moving on to my next question, I'll be going back to the 2 years of lockdown experience that we've collectively had, and we've struggled, there were challenges. And we began to look at life from a different perspective, in a different prism. So it was all very a confusion, but then we figured out what life is all about. And we started thinking. Now, during this time, did you come across anything thought-provoking which you think that you want to address through your art, through your creation?
Wow. Yeah, I guess less than I hoped. I feel like that now you look at it as this kind of chunk of time, it feels like, oh, but I guess none of us knew it was going to be a chunk of time. So I think at the beginning, like a lot of people, I was quite naive about how long it was going to be, and we spent time kind of postponing and rearranging things. I think initially we were like, oh well, you know, in 3 months' time, things will happen again. So there was an enormous amount of time wasted, I suppose, in that shifting and dismantling and rearranging, rather than the kind of, now with hindsight, you're like, okay, if I'd just settled in and gone, nothing is going to really happen now for 18 months or 2 years. But yeah, I found it a really difficult time. I mean, I didn't feel particularly creative. I guess there's that level of anxiety which was quite dominant, and I think I realized that my creative process is like is here. You know, it's in a studio with people, and actually sitting by myself was not. I didn't feel particularly creative in that way. So it helped me really. Or confirm to me that my working practice is not a solitary one.
It's with people.
It's with people.
And as artists, we feed in from other artists, their energy. That's what we need around us.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like, you know, if I look at a piece like this, you know, there's so many of the ideas are the performers. It's what the performers offer, and you know, my role can be to kind of edit and to go, yes, let's do that. But it, you know, by myself, I didn't feel like there was a kind of bubbling of creativity, and you know, that was a good thing to understand and to go, you know, it would be great if I was a novelist and I could sit there by myself and generate works of genius, but it wasn't. That wasn't the case. So there was that, and also, yeah, just really confirming that again, the experience of a space like this, and how much I missed that, and how, you know, so much screen time and absorbing culture through the screen was okay, but it wasn't the thing that,
Well, fortunately, we've now left that behind.
We have left that behind.
And we are looking forward to brighter days. We've had a reset button. We've rethought, and we are moving forward. So what are we looking from Bent Duke and Lost Dog in future? What's coming up?
Wow. Well, yeah, this is hopefully a kind of busy year. I mean, there's other projects coming along. I think that there's I feel like there's a kind of trying to learn, I guess, from, I feel like we've come out of lockdown, or certainly our experience of this is kind of coming out of lockdown with a kind of excitement, and maybe, well, I shouldn't really say that sitting here, but perhaps the ambition was a little bit inflated by our sense of restriction, and so maybe we came out with this thing, and it has been really, really challenging because, of course, COVID is still around, and there's been all of these new complications with Brexit, so there's been things that have felt very difficult coming out of lockdown. But yeah, there are things, there are more projects coming up, and hopefully we'll kind of we'll almost, like, I feel like the kind of, you know, the pressure builds up and suddenly the gates open and you come flying out, and then actually we need to just kind of
we're energized.
Yeah, we're energized, which is great, but it's been difficult, and now hopefully the rest of this year will
new lease of life we've all got. So the Tale of the Two Cities is on at the place till the 5th, which is Saturday, and then you're going on tour with the same show, and that ends in April. And there are more projects, as you say, coming up. So all the best with everything that is happening now and is yet to come.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.